Hi, friends. My name is Host Eric. I'm the host of Talking with Famous People. And Bobby's son has asked a number of interesting questions here. And I would like to ask Rachel's assistance in making the second video addressing those questions.
So the first question we have is, do TI and NI really get/receive information, or do these functions only process information once your SI or SE question mark has received it via your eyes and ears?
Okay, so this question I think is best answered by reminding ourselves that cognitive functions are ways of paying attention. So when you say, do TI and NI really get or receive information? The answer to the question is maybe best answered by comparing the way Rachel and I are watching this show do rah rah rah. She is watching in a more passive way in the sense that she's waiting for enough clues from the show to fall into place for her to understand it holistically. Meanwhile, I'm building possible things off of each element that I hear. Saying, well, this could mean this could mean that, this could mean the other. I better keep track of the details of scenes and stuff. Rachel's more likely to consciously have missed a detail, but she's probably picking up on that sometimes because sometimes she draws conclusions that are correct that might require, from my perspective, having made note of that detail, but she'll have the conclusion without having made at least conscious note of the detail. That would suggest that NI is a way of paying attention that's sort of in a state of readiness, right? It's like it's ready to to receive information from the external environment, and what kind of information you pay attention to. Now, again, paying attention in a receive function creates an immediate problem with language because to pay attention is to do something, but to be in a state of reception is not really to do anything. It's instead to pick up on, specifically attend to, pieces of data that will allow you to put together a puzzle into a complete picture. If you're an SI person, you're attending to pieces of data exactly as they are, you're remembering them, and you're thinking, maybe at the end, after I've gathered them all, I can look at them and see if they make a puzzle, right? So you can think of a puzzle maker as an SI person gets the pieces and works on putting them where they might fit one at a time. The NI user gathers all the pieces and lays them all out and goes, okay, it's a picture of two kittens and a ball of yarn. The SI user is much more likely to actually piece the whole thing together in that regard. It's not a perfect analogy, but the key element here is that you are paying attention to either data relevant to a universalist knowledge or data relevant or the details that aren't regardless of relevance, right? Anything you'd like to add to that, Rachel?
Oh, I think you explained it very well.
Okay, question two.
Question 2. Do you think that FI and TI, as well as a get function, also be a zip or unpack pack function rather than being used on EM field? They pack/unpack info in the IM field to be sent out to and when received from EM field.
Okay, so he's saying kind of a jargony filled way of saying something. What he's trying to say um, is it really TI that gets data from the external field? Um, could you also think of it as zipping or unzipping or unpacking or packing, compressing, uncompressing stuff? Well, you can think of it as that, packing or unpacking, compressing or uncompressing stuff, or unzipping stuff. But that's not different from getting. So in other words, TI is a get function because it's the function that says, well, I need to know what Joe's words are about meh before I can decide whether his words about meh are correct or incorrect. So I have to ask him some questions. Now, once the as TI is parsing through something inside one's head, part of what it's doing is determining what it needs to get still. If it has all the information it needs, then it's running a calculatory process of determining whether something's legit or not. That's depending on whether it's linked with SE or NE, is going to be more about the straight up validity of it, SE, or going to be about how well it fits into larger frames of reference and how well or not, how easy or not easy it is to subject to sort of discursive critiques. But in either instance, TI in that instance is getting information. It's getting either the status of the thing. Here's a set of arguments. I want to get out of that the status, either valid, invalid, or whatever. NI can't know the status; it's too complicated. SI can't know the status; it's never encountered the problem before. So I'm gonna have to parse that with TI. Now, you could know the status of it is, ew, I totally don't want to do that. That's FI knowing the status of it, right? Or you could say FI knowing the status of it as a daunting task that you nevertheless must and will complete because it's very important to you to get an A in this class, for example. That would also be an FI knowing. As far as how exactly FI packs or unpacks or zips and unzips, it has something to do with how when I have feelings like feeling depressed or my feelings are hurt or something, even if, especially, okay, let's say my feelings are hurt because Rachel's telling a story that makes me imagine something bad, even though she wasn't talking about that exactly. I sort of drew an associative link and imagined something bad. And it makes me feel bad about myself, or makes me feel bad about the world or whatever. Well, it takes me a little while to process that out and recognize, okay, this is old stuff or something, Eric. And remember, you're creating these visions using your intuition, inferring things from what she's actually saying, and your hurt feelings here. I need to calculate out as like what's really the source of them. Sometimes it's really the case that somebody's hurting your feelings because they're not dealing with you in a healthy fashion. And sometimes it's the case that your feelings are hurt because of unhealthinesses within you, and that the other person really didn't do anything that justifies hurt feelings. So FI helps you to distinguish between those kinds of events, I would imagine.
I think so too. And it's hard for me even to like parse out FI. I think you said it really well there.
Yeah, I mean, for me anyway, it takes a long time. I think it's basically the slowest function probably for everybody. If you were to say like, maybe FI DOMs are fastest at it, but even the fastest FI DOM, FI fundamentally requires more time to process than TI because it's processing much higher resolution data. Mm. TI is just processing the binary matter.
Yes.
Just the symbolic binaries of it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Should we move on to the third question?
Please.
Would SE putting on the internal physical field be using your looking eyes to see, opening your mouth and sticking your tongue out to taste, or using smelling nose to inhale and smell something also be SE putting on the internal the internal physical field, or do you think these are more SI processes?
Well, I mean, what we need to remember is that SE is kind of one of the most difficult functions to talk about because it's the act of following through for reasons already decided. It doesn't really have any justifications in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what's SE putting on the internal field? That I could feel it burn my hairs. I could feel a little heat there. I just put information on the internal physical field. But is smelling something putting information on the internal physical field? Well, in that instance, you're intending to smell for a reason, right? So in this instance, I intended to demonstrate what it's like to make myself feel something. The choice to take action upon my own body so as to cause me to feel something in this instance was determined by my predominant frame, namely logically consistent new good ideas. And I would never have done that if I didn't think it meaningful in demonstrating my point. If I'm smelling something because I want to know what that is, I know I've smelled that before. What is that smell? Then I'm using SE in a way, but why am I using SE? Because my knowledge, my experiential knowledge frame is predominant there. It's determining the gameplay here. Some sensory data has been noted, a smell that has drawn your attention. Now, whether or not that smell is drawing your attention probably has a lot to do with where SI is in the stack. If you are SI polar, you probably don't notice the familiar but unrecognized smell. It's most likely to be an SI person who's going to say, what is that smell? It smells so familiar to me. And then, oh, God. In that case, you might say they're getting information. Well, sure. But really that's the engagement of the one kind of way that SI engages the world without any epistemology besides itself. In other words, it's like the action SE is a way of looking at, like, let's say you were looking at a picture of a lady, okay? And she's somebody you went to high school with. And you're like, well, what was that lady think? God. And you keep looking and looking at the picture, hoping that it's going to trigger your knowledge. So in that case, it's your SI is broken, right? And you're going, I know this, because your meta SI is still working, but I can't remember what it is. So you keep trying to trigger it with the prompt that associated with it in the first place. Would that be called getting information? It's really called repeatedly trying to know information. It's like you get stuck here until you successfully attend or something. The rest of this question here says, you think these are more SE or SI processes? Well, the thing is, for certain things, you have to have a coordinate. So any doesn't have to go with TI, but it has to go with either TI, SI, or NI or FI. It has to go with some sort of epistemology field, which is to say, I either draw my extroverted intuition from what I've already know before, from what I see outside of me, SE, from what I know to be true already, NI, or from what I feel, FI. I've got to draw it from somewhere, and it's got to be, so in other words, any doesn't happen in a complete vacuum. If it does happen in a complete vacuum, then it's basically just babies imitating the sound of talk with babbling. On the other hand, a function like SI, if it's dominating the frame, it really is going to function mostly with two things, SE and the interface function that it goes with. And the deliberation function is going to be much less a factor. So I feel like that's not a great answer to that question, but there are areas where TE and TI mush, and for each of those things, like areas where FI and FE appear to mush definitionally, SI and SE appear to mush definitionally, but if you were going to simulate it, then you'd have to have things like smell and sight and taste be received, not gotten. If then you choose to receive it, it would still have to be simulated as a reception. The action, a possible action could be receive, but that still wouldn't qualify as getting for the purposes of simulation. And I think that's a good length of video, right?
Yeah, I do too.
Okay, well, hopefully the viewing audience agrees and enjoyed this wonderful walk down cognitive functional lane with yours truly and my beloved dark-haired beauty, Rachel Appaloosa. Have a good evening.
Good night.